Like cooking, everything has a recipe.
A set of instructions to follow in order to gain a certain result.
Music is no different.
Be it ingredients for a dish, a set list for an amazing show,
Or a release strategy for a successful launch.
these are all recipes.
Hi, we're your hosts, Sean.
And I'm Brandon.
Come and join us in our kitchen as we go through the Music Maker's Cookbook.
Let's get cooking.
Welcome to the Music Maker's Cookbook, the podcast where we help independent artists cook up recipes for success in the music industry. I'm Sean,
I'm Brandon.
and we're going to bring back the appetizer real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, last couple episodes, we just kind of jumped into it and shot right into this is what we're talking about today. Here are the goods, but, we're going to kind of...
And honestly, how rude of us.
Right?
Terrible. I would never do that in a session, so... You
Why do it?
got to open it up and make it friendly, make it fun. And we were just like, yeah, business. Just here's a bunch of business. Here's a business buffet.
They both have their perks. There we go.
do.
Yeah.
They do.
So if you're a fan of our appetizers and want us to keep doing it, let us know. If you like us just diving right into it, let us know and we can adjust to how we need to.
Yep.
But I really would like to start off this appetizer kind of talking about a video that I recently saw and just kind of talking about the thing of constantly like learning and looking at different techniques and trying new things and whatnot. Because it's easy to kind of get into what your own kind of creative process is and focus on what your own creation is and forget about all these new ideas.
Mm-hmm.
But it's always worth it to go back and once again listen and learn and try to grow as whatever your craft is, be it a guitarist, a vocalist, a mixing, mastering engineer, a recording engineer, whatever it may be. So I just want to bring up this one video that I saw recently by a YouTube channel called Audio Haze. Fantastic channel.
Yeah.
Not super big, got 70K subscribers.
Okay.
Highly recommend checking them out. We're going to go into why later on in this episode, which this episode is going to be really good when I'm looking forward to talking about it. If you don't know what it's about, check the description or wait about 5 minutes. Woo.
Oh, DMC8 or whatever. DC made.
But no, the video in question is called How to Sound Like Hozier.
Yeah.
Hozier.
Yeah.
Hozier.
I don't know.
I sound like Hozier in your bedroom. And it's a really cool video because it's he's kind of going through the process of recording a song off of his latest album. And I have been out of the recording game for a very, very long time, about 2 years, because the space I'm in currently is purpose built for mixing and mastering, not really recording. And just kind of going back in and watching how this process is broken down to make these huge sounds and the way it's layered was just really, really fun and interesting to me. And I'm really, really hoping that wherever I end up next has a live room because I just want to dive back into it.
Yeah, that stuff's fun, man. That stuff's a lot of fun.
But it's a killer video and I highly recommend you check it out because it's he walks the whole process and really helps showcase the importance of working with an engineer who knows these techniques and can try these things to really flesh out the sound. And he does a pre-mix and post-mix. He'll cut back and forth to what it sounds like before and after.
Yeah.
And it really showcases how important a good mix can be for a song.
Oh, for sure.
And how it takes these raw recordings and makes them sound completely different.
Yeah.
So it's a really good way to kind of get insight in the process of like how it goes on. Because it sounds like a very basic song. He's not really meant for these huge, crazy things going on to it with, the competition of the song. But towards the end, there's like 50 vocal tracks. There's like 10 microphones on the drums to make the kick sound really full and warm and orchestral and all these sounds layered up. Each guitar track has 3 amps on it. And it's the blending of sounds. And it just shows all the technical things that go into making a huge hit song sound like a huge hit song. It's not just slapping 57 in front of a cab. Well, that works great live. In the studio, you want to play around with sounds. Now's the time to, get into the details of it and get creative. So it really highlights the whole process of how they did that for, this Hozier song.
That's great. I want to check out the video. Sean came in talking about it today and I was like, oh, I definitely need to check this out. It's been a while since I've really watched anything like myself like that. People ask me, they're like, oh, you still like watch YouTube videos? I'm like, yeah, I'm like tutorial based stuff, but it's more like, I just want to see other people's workflow because that can be inspiring within itself. And it's like you said, like the more you do it yourself, you kind of get put into things, you naturally start to get comfortable with what you do. And you go and you tend to gravitate towards things that just work. That might not necessarily be the best thing for the situation, right? You're going to get this sound, which is great. So like if you need to rely on it, old reliable, right? You need to rely on it. You go to that sound. nothing wrong with that. But it takes a little bit more to get a little bit more experience with things outside of that, right? You want to be a little bit more creative. You want to get different sounds. You want to keep everything fresh. You want to achieve sounds that you've heard. You want to achieve greater things than the sounds that you've heard, and that just takes like experimentation. And so I think people are always shocked when they're like, "Oh, you still watch YouTube videos?" Like, yes, but only because I want to be inspired by what other people are doing as well and give it a shot for myself, or even build on that somehow.
Yeah, and try new things, add things to my arsenal. Like, it's good to have a set of techniques and skills that are like, I want this sound, I grab that, put it on, okay, I'm there. It's good to have that in your belt. But to really become skilled, you need to expand on that and put more of these skills in your tool belt.
Totally agree.
So that, you know, when push comes to shove, you're in the studio, you're like, oh, I did this really cool thing on this other song that I did for this other band. Let's try it on this song.
Yeah.
Now you can pull it out and see, oh man, this really makes the song sound full and adds a whole new layer to it.
Yeah.
Recently we had a song that we worked on with an artist we both work with, Kevin, where it's not out yet, so I'm not going to spill too much information on it.
Yeah.
But Brandon is like, you know, let's put an ARP on this. Because in
Yeah.
my experience, this sounds good. And it just brought so much new life into the track.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah. And you had it in your tool belt.
Yep.
But you have to keep trying things and experimenting things and getting motivation and learning from other people's techniques. Because now I know how to, from watching this video, now I know how to get this giant orchestral sound, or at least more knowledge on how to get there, if that's what I want, without going and trying it myself. Now I still have that in my head.
Yeah.
So it's important to learn these different techniques.
Most definitely. It is just inspiring. You're watching your peers do things that like you would never think of doing, right? Or getting a weird tip from somebody that's like not well known or something, and then using it in a production. It's like, whoa, this is a whole new thing now, right? It's so cool, and there's a lot to learn and a lot to experiment with, and that can be daunting. So I think those videos also help you gain the confidence to do so too whenever you need it. And I think people should use those videos, of course, through the lens of knowing what's good information versus what's kind of bad information, right? You're going to come across both, right?
Well, what's bad information could be good in certain contexts.
That is true.
You never know.
That is true.
They
They might do something that, you know, that you would maybe not do because it's a little bit unorthodox, or it breaks the rules, all the rules, you know, to all this stuff. So it's just really cool. And I think you should always keep an open mind. I definitely want to check out that video. So I'm going to make you send me the link after.
I definitely will.
Are you going to post a link in the description for everybody?
Oh, yeah, why not?
Sure.
I'll put a link in the description.
Yeah. This is not, we're not sponsored, not affiliated or anything. It's just a cool little thing that Sean
he's just an
discovered.
awesome creator. He's got a lot of really good, especially, well, talking about techniques and skills and getting from other people. That's why I like do this podcast with Brandon every week, because we talk and like I learn new things from him,
Likewise.
workflow and whatnot. Yeah. And in fact, that's what we're going to be talking about today, is some awesome skills and techniques that are really important for every musician to know. And what's great about this guy is he goes through a lot of home recording techniques and whatnot, and showcases different like mic shootouts or recording techniques or whatnot that you can look to and learn to really up your, you know, composition game, your demo game, you know, be able to build things using these kind of techniques and like know like, hey, I want this kind of sounds. Maybe I'll grab this cheap mic that has this sonic profile that I saw from this video, because these reviews can be very helpful to help get you closer. And the closer you are at the start, the more confident you are in what the end result's going to be.
Oh, very much so.
And it makes it so much easier and more fun to compose.
Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah.
So,
you just, when you start with great sounds, you end up with great sound. It's really hard to fuck up those sounds. Let's be totally honest, right? When you start with something great, it's really hard to get a really good sound when you start with something that's not great, right? It takes a lot more time, and it's a lot more heartache, and it's a lot more, I guess, in check, I guess, at some point, you know, with sounds that you're not confident in. And, you know, that can really derail, like you were saying, the compositional process. Because when you don't get a good sound in right away, that tends to have, I say it every fucking episode, it tends to have a negative feedback loop onto the way that you function. And then things can unravel, and you give yourself accidental writer's block sometimes. Or just, you know, I'm using a very specific example, but, you know, things can unravel, and then this can be a lot less fun, right? So...
And if you're not having fun, you're not taking it seriously enough.
Yes,
Fit it in.
Yes,
Woo!
Thank God, man.
All right, so now let's jump into the meat and potatoes of this episode. We're going to be talking about some technical skills, tips, and tricks that you can do to really level up your game. Some technical things that every musician could definitely benefit from having
Definitely.
in their toolbox, in their utility belt.
Yes.
The whole Batman thing.
Yes.
So we're going to kind of break this into two different kinds of skill sets. The first one being maintenance skills. The second one being performance skills.
Yep.
And hacks and tips or tricks, whatever you want to call it. So kind of jumping in with some maintenance things. Let's start with one of the biggest things that you should know.
Know how to change your strings, please. Oh my God. I think that's like Guitar 101. And I'm not here to like flex or make you feel bad, but this should be something that you know almost right out the gate. I mean, you're going to have to change your strings at some point, right? Whether it's they've been on for 4 years, or like you're going to play shows and you need to change your strings before every show, or you need to go to the recording studio and you need to change your strings before every session, right? You're going to have to change your strings at some point. Or the ever elusive, you're gonna break your string eventually, right? Just because it's so old, or like your strings sound like shit, or they have dirt on them and oils that build up and just get yucky and oxidize the metals in there, and you can even get rust on your strings, right? So you're gonna have to change them eventually. So learn now and get some practice in with it, because Sean, I think, brought up something really nice before the podcast aired. Maybe I'll even let him talk about it, but like, you might come into a situation where you have an emergency and you need to change those strings. I mean, have you ever seen something like that when you do live sound?
Yeah, I've seen strings break multiple times, but even in a studio setting, it could even be more scary to have a string break and not have the ability to change strings. Most times the engineer might be able to help you out, but at the same time, if you're good and you're quick, you can just have somebody else hop on and you can take care of it, because otherwise now you're killing studio time and you paid for it.
Yeah.
And if you know, this is my guitar, this is my tone, I can't pull another guitar off the shelf, or I don't want to pull my backup guitar. You need to be able to just change the strings.
Exactly.
But the bad thing is, if that does happen, if you're not playing with new strings and then you swap it with new strings, you're gonna have to redo all the gigs.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah. But you don't want to get out of that flow. If you're in the flow state, you're in, you're feeling the song, you don't want to take yourself out of it even more by having to come back in another day. You're planning that all out.
I'm probably one of the few people that actually enjoy changing their strings. I just think it's very satisfying. But I know there are people out there, probably the majority of people, that probably would absolutely just loathe doing this. It's not sexy. It's not fun. It can be frustrating too. Like, let's say you accidentally overwind a string and you break it. Now you got to go buy another pack of strings, right? They can be frustrating. Like Sean said, these things take you out of the flow state of being creative. And then now you got to focus on very technical stuff. It's not super technical that you can't do it and you're going to hinder the whole day, but it will take you out of it. And like I said, it can be super frustrating if you have one of those occurrences happen with you. And to Sean's point too, you'll probably be paying one of the most expensive techs to ever do your guitar too, because you're paying for studio time, and that can cost upwards of hundreds of dollars. And if you have to have the engineer do it, then that's taking time away from you, and he has to set up your guitar and everything. That's another thing, is changing your string can also maybe lead to a setup if you're using a different gauge, which we will talk about setups as well. It's another part of our technical maintenance skills. But yeah, you're going to be paying a lot of money to have somebody change your strings that you could have done for about $6, and that's for a pack of strings and 15 minutes of your time.
Yeah. And we were focused on strings at the start, but this also applies to like drum heads. Any sort of instrument that you need to replace any aspect of it before you come into the studio, or before you go live, or however you want to, whatever gives it that sound that is, usable. Or needs replacing. You need to have the knowledge of how can I switch up on it.
And if you think guitar strings are annoying, change some drum heads and then tune them up, because that is probably one of the most annoying things ever. I'm not a drummer, I'm a guitar player, right? So I'm naturally biased in this, but it takes a long time. You have to disassemble the kit, you have to take the shells off of the stands, you have to take the whole loop off the top, and oh my God, like that's already giving me anxiety. And you know what? You might as well just clean them while you're there from all the stick dust, right? And stuff like that. So if you thought changing your guitar strings, all you guitar players out there, consider yourself blessed, so that way you don't have to do a whole entire kit. We keep looking at the kit over here. There's a kit
one around the corner
behind the camera, right? So that's why we keep looking at it. But yeah, so that's a whole nother sack of potatoes.
Yeah. Well, and also what you were starting to get into is kind of the next skill that's very important to have, and that is maintaining your setup of the guitar, of your instrument, of the drums, whatever it be, meaning knowing how to tune your drums so that, if you want to deaden the bottom so it's like more go boom versus the ringing tom, you can know how to do that, or adjust the snare so it sits better in with the song, or just get the sound that you want.
Yeah.
But also like setting up an instruments for the guitar, it'd be knowing how to adjust the truss rod.
Oh yeah.
Potentially knowing how to shave the frets so you can smooth it all out when things happen to it.
How to adjust your saddles, how to adjust the bridge.
Yep. Your pickup height.
Yep. How to create your own nut in case your nut fails. Pause. That was a weird way to say that. I'm very sorry.
No, it's not.
Did I make it weird?
Put into it. A recipe you need to know for success in the music industry is how to create your own nut.
That's right.
Moving on from it, you should also know what kind of pick you use, because picks, this is once again for guitars or string instruments like bass or whatnot, depending on what genre you are, they drastically affect
Oh my
the sound.
God, it's incredible.
And if you've never done it, get a light pick, a medium pick, and a heavy pick, and then just play the same thing, same 4 chords, switch the pick, play it again, and you'll be able to just hear how differently your instrument sounds.
Yeah.
So knowing what strings and what strings you use affects it. The tone of the, if it's an acoustic, the tone of the wood, the body, that affects it.
Yep.
So just kind of playing around with it and finding what do you want. Brandon and I were talking before this, and like for his guitar, he's like, I always have people use a light pick.
I do. Yeah. Everybody that's worked with me knows that I'm like, use this pick. And I always hand them a pick every time. They're like, do I have to use this? I'm like, yes, you do. Yes, you do.
Trust me, you'll be happier for it.
Yes.
That being said, I always say use a medium pick.
Yep.
I love the Fender mediums.
Yep.
So
those are great too. I will use those when I do want, like you were saying, like a little bit of a duller-ish sound that's not so attacky. I will use those. I hardly will ever use a heavy pick on an acoustic. Hardly ever.
Very rare on acoustics. I do for electrics.
I do
Especially
too.
if I want more of like a
Yep. I want that. I want them to dig in, right?
Yeah. So having the skill of knowing what the song requires and changing the picks, that's really
the funniest
useful.
part is too, we're talking about like the density of the pick, but not only that, but what the pick is made of. Is it made of plastic? Is it made of nylon or whatever? It's nylon, right? Bone. What's the
stone?
What's the tortoise shell? The Dunlap Jazz 3/4s or whatever the Jazz 3 picks. They're made of some material. Yeah. They differ, right?
Yeah.
And even that affects the tone within itself. So, and of course, you want to be comfortable while playing, so you have to find that medium with the pick. And by the way, have like a lot of them at your disposal, because you'll drop them, you'll lose them, they'll fall into your acoustic guitar cavity. Just get a lot of them, know what picks that you want, and keep a lot on them, or keep a lot of them on you. Wow, that was a really big struggle.
But we got through it. We got through it together.
Thank you. I could have done it without you.
And yeah, you could have.
Stop.
You're an independent man who don't need no podcast host. I don't know. But moving on top of, these are all instruments we've listed: guitars, drums, bass, applies to a lot of string instruments like mandolin or banjo or whatnot. And then the drums, anything percussive, it applies to changing the drum head or tuning that.
Yeah.
Which Brandon just got. What is that called again? No. What's that drum again?
Oh, conga.
Conga, yeah. Brandon's got a conga. So
yeah, they're
he's
cool.
going to have to learn how to adjust that.
I am. I'll probably never touch it.
I'll
never tune it.
Someone's going to come in and want
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. I was hitting the sides the other. Sorry, a little tangent. I was playing with it yesterday. I was hitting the sides. I was like, ooh, that smack sounds good. I'm like, I'm going to use that. Like just on the sides, I'm like, yeah, that's nice, man. So I'm going to have to tune it.
Yeah, you are.
I'm going to have to tune it. I'm going to have to learn how to reskin it too.
Yep.
It just is what it is. Yep.
But this also applies to any other instrument, be it trumpet or saxophone or anything that requires maintenance. You're going to have to know how to
woodwind like a reed or something.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly. How to change the reed. I mean,
how to lubricate the mouthpiece.
Exactly.
It's unfortunate.
Exactly.
Because you have the wax that goes onto the actual tip itself of the instrument, and you got to learn how to find that happy medium. I used to play saxophone in school, and I like overdid the wax on the mouthpiece thing, and like it just looked like shit. It sounded like shit. I sucked at it. It was terrible. But you have to know how to take care of it. I didn't know. I was in the 6th grade. Right?
Do you know now?
No.
Damn it.
No. I don't have anything to practice on, and I don't ever get them into the studio. But I know one day
I had a client who gave me a sax.
Really?
And I have no idea how to maintain it. This is a skill that I need to learn. So I am like, I'll bring it into somebody, or I'll find somebody who knows what to do, because I have no idea what to do.
It's so important though, like for every instrument, like you were saying.
Yeah. And this instruments include your voice.
Oh yes, the elusive voice.
Yeah.
Yeah, know how to take care of your voice. It's an instrument like everything else, and the best part is that it follows you around all day. But the worst part is that it follows you around all day because you'll be talking, right? And you're using your vocal cords. There's an example out there, and it's actually fairly common to hear, I think, nowadays. But Taylor Swift, I know we bring her up every time, but Taylor Swift She actually doesn't talk before her shows, and she doesn't talk after her shows. She tries to limit that very much. I mean, she's playing a 2.5-hour set, right, for on the Eras tour, and that's a long time. And she's trying to maintain the health of her vocal cords and to make sure that she can go out there and deliver to her fans. But that you might not need to take it to that extent at this point. And if you do, then kudos to you. That's awesome. But you just need to know the basics of taking care of your voice at this point. It's an instrument.
Yeah. And for more details on it, we kind of dive more into that in episode 22, Cooking with Gas in the Studio. We talk about how to do some prep work before going in to make sure when you do get into the studio, you're able to perform top notch. And that includes the voice. So check out that episode for more details on that. But in addition to that, another good skill is knowing how to take care of your equipment that is electronic.
Yeah.
Not everything is acoustic. In fact, most things not at this point are electronic.
Yep.
Be it your pedals, your guitar itself, your bass, and knowing how to solder or fix problems on amps, like knowing where to look for when things have issues.
Yep.
Like knowing your gear well enough to be able to troubleshoot within seconds.
Yep.
Really helps in live. Can definitely help in the studio, wherever you end up going, or in the rehearsal, just not spending as much time. Be like, oh, well, I'm having this issue, so let me check. These are the point of failure. This is the point of failure. I'm gonna check the fuse on the amp, or I'm gonna make sure that it's not it's loose on this jack of the guitar or whatever the hell.
Yep.
Or I'm gonna check my cables and swap those out real quick.
Exactly.
And knowing how to solder cables is a huge important skill,
and it's fun, dude.
Yeah,
it's fun. I recently had my soldering endeavors, and I had never really soldered before, besides for the class that Sean and I had to take when we were back in school, and I was trash, and I ended up just jumping into the deep end. You know this because I bought material to solder my own cables, and I was like, all right, finally just gonna do it. Sean gave me a bunch of cool tips. He even gave me some materials to use because I actually threw out my XLR connectors when I was moving. Stupid. Don't do that. But yeah, so I just recently finished up all the cables myself. I plugged them in. They had issues with them, right?
Yep.
Turns out I had the wrong wiring diagram and I had to go back and resolder them. But we had to troubleshoot. Sean taught me a few things along the way, and now they work perfectly fine. Sean's using one right now.
Yeah.
And like that's a skill that I'm able to take further, right? So like now when I open up a guitar cavity, right, I have to open up the Strat because that's been having pickup issues. I can troubleshoot that. I know I can solder that. Yeah. No big deal, right? Now the stakes are a little bit higher maybe because I don't want to kill the pickup or any electronics in there, but the skill's there, right? And like I think a lot of this, like what we're kind of touching on now, is like knowing your equipment and how to use it will take a lot of the pressure off of you later, right? Because during these high pressure situations in these emergencies, for musicians, I mean, this can literally make or break a moment for you, right? Yeah. And this can make something not fun very quickly, right?
Well, here's a real life application of that to kind of put into perspective. I used to do sound for this pretty large wedding band in Michigan that would jump around from location to location. And they would go out to any place in the state, Ohio, whatever, any surrounding area, and get a hotel. And at that point, you only have the gear that you have. And we were at one gig where the guitarist was having a lot of issues with their cable, where it wasn't working. So they scratched it, they used their backup cable, and the show went as planned. Well, now they don't have a backup cable. So I carry on with a Pelican case that's got my audio maintenance kit.
Nice.
And that night at the hotel, I just resoldered the cable and fixed it up, tested it, worked out great, and gave it back to them the next day because they had a couple other things that they were going out in the area. And just doing that, it saved, what, $25?
Yeah.
Which, isn't necessarily a crazy amount, but it definitely adds up.
It does.
And at the very least, if he uses the other cable now, he's still got the backup. So if something does happen, if something rolls over that cable and cuts it in half, or this one gets disconnected for some reason, or there's problems later on, or the other guitarist or the bass player has a problem with their cable and they got to use that one, well, now they've got one that they can still work around with.
Yeah, and what's the alternative to knowing how to do this is just carrying around extra cables, right? And like you said, that can get expensive, especially depending on what kind of cables you're using. Like if you're using those Mogami cables, I bring them up a lot because like the price points are just hilarious. Like I think it's like $90 for like a 18-foot cable, XLR cable. That's insanity, dude. That's insanity. Do you really want to be paying $90 to have extra cables with you? Maybe you should have one extra cable just in case like it's really shot, or like you need to really open it up and really troubleshoot it. Like for example, I was at a studio like 2 weeks ago doing a bass track for somebody at Soundscape Studios out in Royal Oak, and they actually didn't have enough cables that would like kind of satisfy what we needed to do. And luckily I brought my Mogami cable with me. And he was like, do you have like a short cable? I was like, I have my 17-footer, which is a weird number, right? But I have my 17-foot cable, but it's a Mogami cable. He's like, that's perfect. He's like, as long as it's Mogami, like we can use that, you know? And I was like maybe 5 feet away from the DI box, right? So there was lots of slack for me to move around, but it just goes to show carrying around sometimes these extra things can help alleviate issues like that later on. Because sometimes like, you will need that extra cable, even if you are in a studio. Yeah. Should they have them? Sure. But you know, shit happens, right? So just be prepared.
Yeah. Well, also knowing how to maintain your instruments and knowing how to fix things using with wall soldering is a huge money saving hack too.
Yeah.
So I have a Mexican Fender P Deluxe.
It's awesome.
Which I
think
it's
a great bass.
Yeah, I think it's around $1,000, $1,100.
I love the
bass.
inlays on it.
Yeah,
yeah.
I really like it. It's fun to play. I think it's an $1,100 bass or $1,000 bass.
Yep.
I got it off Facebook Marketplace for $550.
Stole it.
Well, the reason being was there were some issues with the bass, with one of the pickups. So when I got it back. Took all the strings off, took off the faceplate, and one of the soldering joints had broken off.
Oh, okay.
So there was a cable that was only connecting occasionally if you like held it a certain way, so gravity made it connect. And then even then it would be intermittent. So I just resoldered it, and now it works great.
Yeah.
So I saved $450.
Yeah.
Just because I know how to solder.
That's crazy, dude.
Now, same thing happens where if you like going on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist or however you find, you ever like go out and look and find gear and whatnot.
Yep.
So a lot of times people who have been doing it for a while are getting out of it or will try to fire sale things. Sometimes see, fire sale, 50 cables.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah. For $1 a cable. Like most of them don't work or whatever. Well, if you know how to solder and fix them, then you can test, see the ones that do work, resolder the joints. Or even if it's like, there's a cut here in the cord. Well, now you can cut it.
Yep.
Put new ends on, make short jumpers. Yep. Or you can just take the ends off and now you've got extra XLR or 1/4 inch or whatever the connecting type is that you can make new cables with that are of higher quality. So it's a great way to get materials for really, really cheap. Like I recently went to a place on Facebook Marketplace where I got, I want to say 14 XLRs, male and female, 14 TS and 14 TRS ends. And I got them for like $10, $15.
I'm jealous, dude.
Yeah, and now I can just make a bunch. And I used all of my 1/4 inch cables and some of my XLR female cables to make custom cables to go from my patch bay into all my gear in my studio. And that, if I bought all the cable new, that was pre-made, that would have cost me $100.
Oh yeah, yeah. The pre-made stuff is so expensive.
Exactly. But I was able to get aluminum shielded, install grade audio cable and solder it myself, and at the end of the day I wired my whole studio for probably less than $100.
That's great, man. That's great, dude. I mean just for example, I this stand right here that you're seeing on YouTube only, I got this for $10 the other day on Saturday. This stand goes for $70 brand new, and there were a few issues with it. There's a couple rust spots on here. Well, what am I going to do? I'm just going to sand them out and then spray paint. That's really it. Maybe not even spray paint. I might even go and get some decent paint for a few extra bucks, right? And then I just use some WD-40 and now it works like it's brand new. All the joints are perfectly fine and everything like that. I just saved $60, right? And it's going to take me 15 minutes to fix this up a little bit. Honestly, just looking at it, I don't even need to do that if I didn't want to.
No.
But I'm going to, just to make it look new. That's it. So these skills are very important to have, and they're not hard to do once you kind of get like into the motion of doing it. There's lots of resources out there, like YouTube videos, lots of like blog posts, things like that.
Oh, so much.
Yeah. And honestly, it's just a wealth of knowledge out there, and you give it a shot. Maybe something low stakes at first, and then they'll work your way up.
And we'll probably make some of ourselves eventually, so stick around.
Yeah, definitely.
Because it's just really important information to have.
Yep. Now, flip side, I just want to talk really quick. Flip side of the things, we talked about more physical, hardware-y kind of stuff.
Yep.
You also know how to need to know how to troubleshoot software, because that's going to be really important. A lot of these guitar effects processors out here rely on software to run them. I'm thinking of like the Line 6 Helix pedal board. I'm thinking of the Axe Effects. I'm thinking of the Kemper. I'm thinking of the Neural DSP modeler thing. Yep. They all rely on software to run these devices these days. And I mean, even your iPad, if you're using that in a live situation, right? You need to know how to troubleshoot these things, and you need to know when to update and when not to update, right?
Yes.
Because like if you're updating right before a show, that could spell disaster. So
if you need to update, do it at least for rehearsal so you can work out all the bugs.
Exactly. Like I just recently updated my computer, and it's been like 2 years since then. I'm like, I don't have a lot of projects going on right now. So I've just finished up a project too. I was like, I feel comfortable doing it now because I want to make sure I have like the security features, and I want to make sure that like I was having an issue with the powering down on my computer. I want to make sure that was alleviated, and everything works perfectly fine. It's rock solid. And like that, I got lucky because sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes you'll brick your system. Sometimes things will be changed, right? And then all of a sudden when you have like, let's take a amp modeler, for example, you had a specific pedal on there. Now the protocol is a little bit different, and then it rips the pedal off or puts it in bypass. So when you switch to your patch, it's off now. And now everything's fucked with your tone, right? And it's like, well, what do I need to do? You don't want to be doing that in the studio. You don't want to do that live. That's an emergency. Yeah. Like that is a crucial part of how you sound. And so know when to update your software and know how to troubleshoot the software too when those things come up.
Well, also a lot of these devices that function with software, things like that, allow you to back up to a flash drive or to a computer. And that's really important to have a backup.
Very much
and just kind of toss it in the bag, keep it with you. So in case something does happen, like there's a power surge and all of a sudden all the custom presets you made on your electronic pedal board get wiped, which does happen.
It happens.
There are safety procedures that a lot of these devices have so that it doesn't brick the thing, but it does factory reset or wipe all this personal presets of it. I've had that happen in a couple of installs we've done where the unit we use, the drive rack to control the whole PA, gets completely wiped.
Oh God.
If we don't have it saved, now we have to reprogram the whole thing by scratch. So having it on a flash drive and labeling it and keeping it aside and maybe having two of them or on both the things so you can just plug it in, reload what you're doing.
What's the rule on backups again? 2 physical, 1 on location, 1 off location, and then a cloud backup, right?
Yeah.
That's typically the
if you really want to be safe.
Yeah, exactly.
If you really want to be safe.
Exactly. I have a story too really quick before we move on to the next one is for these, I'm using the pedals as a really good example just because it's top of mind. But my friend Johnny, who just came in to do some guitar tracks for my friend Eric, he uses a Line 6 Helix pedal board. He has 2 of them. The first one though, there was a power surge and the LCD screen I think went out on it. And so well, you can't see what you're doing on that thing. And so what's your alternative? Plugging it into a computer. If you don't have your laptop with you or your laptop sucks like mine and you have to keep it powered in all the time.
Or don't know how to plug it in.
Or don't know how to plug it in. You are absolutely screwed in that situation, especially if you're running it in front of a house. That's your whole rig right there. You're sunk. It's over. So you need to have these troubleshooting opportunity or have these troubleshooting things in your back pocket, know how to troubleshoot the software. And I mean, at this point, it might not be bad to have 2 just in case, but that's super overkill because like some of these things are really expensive. So if you want to go that route, like I said, it's expensive, but it's up to you. It's up to you. So I think I think we've talked about it.
Talk about that to death. Yes. So kind of continuing off of the whole software conversation and having that as a skill, I'm going to kind of move more into the realm of what we do with mixing and recording and all that. And that is, it is a great skill to know how to record demos and track your own music. There's multiple reasons to do this. Multiple reasons. I will tell you one of them. No. But no, we talked about this in episode 22, which came out not too long ago. It's 2 episodes ago. I brought it up earlier today about the vocal thing, but we talk about it in terms of preparing for going into the studio. If you know how to record basic ideas, it allows you to then practice harmonies on top of it, add compositional layers to it, go into the studio with a scratch track so that you can prepare ahead of time. Now you don't have to record a scratch track in the studio and not take up studio time. You can record backing things, kind of get an idea across that you can then have other people record on top of. That makes the flow of it better, the feel of it better, so you get a better performance in the studio. You can shop it out to other artists who, hey, this is a demo I've got. I'd love to have you play drums on this. Are you interested? Or I'd love to have you add strings to this. Are you interested? And having a higher quality one better communicates your vision and really can help get some awesome things going with it. Awkwardly phrased sentence, but it is really important. Like how to export stems, how to convert files, how to line up takes, how to make edits, especially for sending things out to a remote mixing engineer, how to have your stems lined up so everything syncs automatically so you're not spending time going back and forth like, oh no, the vocal's a little bit earlier, move this around here. That is insanely helpful to have. And luckily with how cost-effective recording has gotten, you can do it really cheap on your phone, on your computer with just, we talked about on episode, what was it, 21 or something?
Something like that. It was recent.
About $230 for a interface, a microphone, and headphones, and an XLR that you can just record demos from right away. And it's just a huge, huge skill to have.
It is. It is. And like you said, like you kind of alluded to this, and like not only will you know kind of like what is going on at the studio, right? But you'll know like how to like express terms a little bit better too. The more you kind of dive into it, you'll be able to tell somebody, hey, I want you to nudge this 10 milliseconds to the left, or hey, I need these multi-tracks, not stems. I need these multi-tracks so that way I can do blah, 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 blah to this. Stems and multi-tracks are different. Just letting everybody know now.
Mostly used interchangeably, but there is a difference.
But there's a technical difference, and like that is something you will need to know, because when you get stems, you're gonna be like, where are the multi-tracks? And it's like, oh, well, that isn't that, right?
I just gave you a bus sends.
Right. And I mean, when people say stems, I know exactly what they mean. I'm going to give them multi-tracks every time, you know? But there are the few occasions where if you're working with somebody maybe a little bit more old school, they're going to give you a bunch of buses, and it's going to be like, why are all the drums on one track, right? That's a stem technically. So just knowing the terminology and like you said, like how to do these things as just like a general idea of will help things be a little bit more productive for you, and you'll be a little bit more engaged along the way. And I think that overall just works in the benefit of the production itself.
Now, obviously, you don't need to go too deep into it unless it really interests you. But as you mentioned, having high quality demos can be very, very efficient. It can be like in the studio. Once again, if you're composing things on top of it, having a good quality vocal that you can then practice harmonies on top of, so that when you go in the studio, you know what notes you're hitting instead of coming up with harmonies on the fly. Just to reiterate the benefits of having that kind of skill set allows for all the other things you do to be more prepared. And also, if you know how to work your way around a DAW, digital audio workstation, then you can also approach other people in the field and get more use from it. Like you can say, hey, at this live venue, would you be able to record multi-track to this flash drive if I gave it to you? And then they can record it and you can put it in your session and line it all up, edit the song. So, hey, we have first song, second song, third song, and then you can send those off to an engineer to mix and master, versus sending the whole large file where it could take an hour or so to upload everything. Have them edit it, and if they charge hourly or however it ends up being, you could save time by doing it that way. So that's another positive having it done too.
Definitely. So I think moving on to the next one. Know the basics of photo and video. I think that's a pretty important one, just because of like the day and age we live in. You can get a lot of content, a lot of useful content out of video and photo.
Look at what we do.
Opportunities. I mean, exactly. Look exactly what we do, right? Even recently in the studio, I've been doing a lot more video stuff, right? And it's just about knowing like the basics of things. Like the goal here, I think, with this point and the other point we just made, is you don't have to be a professional at this. There are people that do this professionally, and you're most likely hiring them to do it professionally, right? You just need to know enough to get you the results that you're looking for quick and easily, right? So if you're doing like a band practice or something, you need to know how to set up lighting that makes your band look the best, make the shot look the best. You need to know about frame rates and how to shoot those. For example, if you're shooting 30p, you won't be able to exactly, or 30 FPS, you won't exactly be able to slow it down in post if you want to do slow motion. Now, if you're recording a 60 FPS, you could, right? Just those small advantages and small pieces of tidbits here and there that'll give you some better looking content overall, and maybe give you a little bit more freedom on what you want to do. And that same thing goes for ISO settings, your aperture settings, and your shutter speed. Like I said, you don't have to be experts in these, but just know how they generally work so you can get the best shot possible. Save the professional stuff to the professionals if that's the route you want to go, or if you're more interested in it, then dive deeper. But just know, I think, the general idea of how they work and why they work the way that they do, and you're good.
Yeah, because basically everything you just said.
Yeah.
I mean, I could try to elaborate, but it'd basically just be reiterating. I mean, I guess I'm just gonna say at the end of the day, we live in a digital world where a lot of ways people find out about things is through social media, and short form video is king. So being able to get higher quality video and know how to apply filters or get things done to make it stand out really helps you.
Yeah.
If you know how to frame things so it grabs people's attention, that really helps you. If it's high quality so it looks, professional and presentable, which most phones have that quality built into them at this point, that's a high skill set. Knowing lighting is huge, not only for video and photography, but it also helps you when you're on stage. Being able to communicate to, if there's a lighting guy there, you can communicate like, hey, we wear this kind of look, we will go for this kind of vibe, so we want these kinds of lights. Now you can communicate that. So it's just a helpful skill set to have.
Definitely.
And then on top of that, the basics of photo and video, also having a basics of recording and live sound is also helpful.
Yep.
And we're talking about real basics here. You don't got to go too deep into it. But for a quick example, there is one band that I've worked with over the past 7 years. They're a cover band called Power Play Detroit. Phenomenal people. And for the first 5 years, they would always line up the standard way. You've got guitar on the left, lead vocal in the middle, bass on the right, and drums in the back.
Yep.
That's the standard live set.
Yep.
Very traditional. This drummer played loud. Very, very loud. And sometimes community events, we'd have them in a band shell or whatnot. That throws sound right back in the front.
Yeah.
So most times we wouldn't even use an overhead because it would get caught up in the vocal mics, the bleed of it all the time. Knowing that the past 2 years, they've started to offset the drums to the side. If they have enough stage space, they'll put them all in line, or they'll put it more behind the bass and they'll move the lead vocals more away from it. And this really helped get more clarity from the lead vocals and get more punch from the drums, because I'm not getting all this muddiness coming from the vocal mics. So that kind of knowledge allowed them to have a better sound and perform better on stage. Yeah. So that's just one basic example.
I feel like that's what you see a lot in churches too. They'll typically move the drummer off to the side and have a shield around them or something. And that just enhances the quality, but you still get the quality of the drums.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
And that kind of knowledge, what also helps you know where you're positioning the stage. Like, oh, I know like if you're rehearsing, the bass player gets the vibe off of the drums. So I'm going to put them to the left of the drummer so they get the snare and the hi-hat in their ear, so they don't have to put it through a wedge or put it through their ears, so they can actually hear at the end of the night.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just try to do that. Or also, hey, I know in live sound, the more stuff you have come out of the monitor, the higher you have to boost the vocals or EQ it. So you have to make everything louder, which increases stage volume, so it sounds worse, but also are more susceptible for feedback. Knowing that, maybe you rehearse with just vocals in the wedge and try to, maintain a consistent volume with the amps on stage so that you don't have to blare everything from your wedge. And once again, you get a cleaner, better sound. So this is kind of technical things like that for live.
Definitely.
And we said it kind of applies into recording.
Yeah, recording, I think it also helps too to kind of know the basics of what you might get when you're inside a studio. Not only that, but also for what you're going to be doing at your own place too. So like, for example, like instead of going into a corner, like everybody always says, to record, sometimes that can be detrimental to your recording, especially vocals, just because you'll get some comb filtering sometimes, depending on the reflection of the room. You'll get a lot of nasty resonances too. Sometimes it's just better recording in the middle of the room, right? That's like a good example, I think, of vocal recording, or getting used to playing with a piece of tape above your nut on the guitar, right? Or right on top of the nut to help eliminate string noise in studios and stuff. And that's something that you're going to kind of have to know how to play around, right? Because that will change your technique a little bit, especially if you're around the first fret a lot of the time.
Well, that really is a great transition into the next set of skills that are important, is kind of performance skills. So this is kind of a transitional part.
Definitely.
Because as Brandon was just saying, in the studio, you have to perform very differently because now you're getting all these microphones and different techniques going on to get a super clean recording. The whole point of it is to get that high quality take.
Yep.
So knowing like, hey, maybe I practice this song where I don't hit the crash and ride at all. So we can have a clean take of the drums and then a clean take of the cymbals. So we can bleed them together to get a lot more sharpness out of each part of it. So I can boost the mid highs on the drums to get a lot of attack from the toms without also increasing the harshness of the hi-hat.
Yep.
You know, that's a recording technique. So maybe practice the drums without the cymbals. Or as you mentioned, the guitar with some tape on it.
Yep.
Or playing with the guitar with a mask on to cut breaths. We go into a lot of different things, techniques in episode 22.
Yes, we do a ton.
Check that out.
Yep, definitely. Another important skill, which we actually went, I think, with 22 as well, is playing to a click or a metronome.
Big one.
Really big one. Metronomes have been around forever.
They have.
And it's really important that you should be able to play to one pretty successfully. You don't have to be dead on 100% of the time. Like, we're human, we make human errors, and we're not a computer. But you should be able to play to one, and you should be pretty tight to one too, if you're asked to do so. Like in those situations when you're playing with a band in the recording studio and you're playing in a live room together, that usually goes by the wayside because you follow the drummer a lot more. Your drummer is the click track, which is usually the way that we listen to music. We don't listen to a click, of course, but it is important to know how to play to one just in case you're asked to do so, especially if you're piecing off and doing a lot of overdub work during your production process.
So you had me curious now. And the metronome has a very interesting history about it.
Really?
According to some places on Google, it was first invented in 1969 by a French musician, Etienne Louis. I don't know. I can't speak French. Then also another one saying that it was kind of more the modern metronome as we know it was patented by Johann Nepomuk Maelzel in 1815.
Wow.
So at the very least, it's been a couple hundred years
that
it's been on, and it's just been a very useful tool to help musicians learn how to keep time and stay consistent all throughout those, centuries at this point.
Yep. I wish I had mine. Mine's over
fact.
there by the cabinet. I would have totally showed it on
you've
camera.
got the, you got
I do.
Nice.
Yeah, I do. I got it from Salvation Army for like $5.
Nice. I've seen a couple there. I've thought about grabbing one.
Yeah, it's just a cool piece to have.
But there's so many benefits to playing to a click, in the studio and live, especially the bigger you get, the more stuff you incorporate into your performance. We brought up in one of the last episodes as well about live performance, how you can set lights and effects and video walls and all that to MIDI so that you can basically have a performance that runs itself and can be consistent and be very visually and auditorially evolved beyond just performing into microphones and having somebody run it up front. So if you want to be effective with that, you got to play to a click.
Yep.
Very, very important.
Yep.
And then beyond that, another skill that's really good to have is be able to tune by ear.
Yeah.
Whether it's whatever instrument it is, but knowing how to do it for guitar is really important because a lot of places when you're just starting off, a great way to kind of get experience performing and get your music out there is to do open mics. A lot of these places have house guitars. Those house guitars are never in tune.
Like ever. Never.
And if it's just you playing an acoustic set, it doesn't have to be exactly 440. You're not worried about it being messed up with other instruments. You just want your instrument to act as one. So being able to tune by ear, go with the fifth, the fourth frets, going down the line, make sure everything sets up where it needs to be. That is a very good skill to be able to do quickly so you can get a killer performance, especially if you're doing a live and using a house guitar or whatever, and everyone before you doesn't know how to do it, and it just sounds awful. Then you come up there and now you sound amazing. Yep. Well, that's a good impression.
Yes, it is. Yeah, very much so. And then I think another cool situation would be is know how to tune by ear to a piano. But there's a caveat to that, right? You have to make sure that the piano's in tune because you know what? Actually, if you're playing with a piano though, that's out of tune. You want to tune to the piano anyway, so that you're in tune with the piano. There's like a facade that happens, right? There's a sync point where you want to be in tune with whatever you're using together between everybody, right? So if you're using a pedal yourself, generally you want everybody to use that same pedal, so you're right along the same lines, right? You have that synchronization between each other. So actually tuning to a piano is actually probably the most beneficial, especially if you are playing to a piano. But if you're not, then and you can trust the piano being in tune, know how to discern those frequencies, you know, and listen for the clashes and be able to tune against that and make sure that it becomes in pretty much 100% phase, right, with the frequency, right? And I think that's just like a super good application to use. I will say that there are phone applications you can do the same thing with. I'm not a massive fan personally of using those phone applications unless it's like, because I have heard piano sampled incorrectly at like very out of tune, or like you said, maybe it's a different like tuning itself. Maybe it's 4/4/4 by accident, and they didn't know and they sampled it anyways, and it sounds off. And I've heard them in actual keyboard units, and it's like, this is like shockingly off. Like, this is just terrible. And then you have to tune them up somehow. So you have to be able to make sure that your reference point of tuning is in tune.
We could do a whole episode about this, or a whole video about this. In fact, I might want to do that later on.
We might
some videos.
Yeah, I'm down for that.
Yeah, diving into what tuning is, because tuning isn't just tuning. A C is not like an A is not always an A at this, like the same way another A is.
Exactly.
A440, A444, A430,
432. That's where everything sounds better, right? So
so it really depends on what the tuning for everything is, and the consistency of it is key, and being able to hear it so you can do it by ear. It also builds up the skill of knowing when, hey, that's not in tune.
Yep.
It's like, yeah, it is. It's a C. It's like, well, it's not. So just make that a little flat, and now it sounds really nice.
Yeah.
So having that skill is,
and we're not going to go into it right now, but we did mention it before, but having the intonation as well, super important. And that can be the intonation's more frustrating than tuning.
Yes.
100% of the time. And so you'll have to be able to discern between that too when you go to tune. So maybe another video for a different day. Yeah, I think you're right. Let's do a separate video for that.
We can go really in depth.
Oh man, it's a whole science. It's really sciencey, honestly.
And it's very interesting.
It actually is. No, we're nerds though.
We're definitely gonna do that.
Yeah, we're nerds.
You heard it here first. So moving on. This is one that I really want Brandon to take over, because he brought it up, and the way you learned it, and the applications you brought up before we started recording this.
Yeah.
Very, very beneficial, and that is how to practice.
Yeah,
which sounds weird.
It sounds weird, and it is kind of weird actually. It's a weird thing to think about because we don't internalize it naturally, I don't think, because we just don't think about it. And we did this in terms of studio performance versus live performance, and I'm not talking about practicing in general. Like, you should know how to practice, like play to a click. You should be, if you have a demo, play to the demo, right?
Have your warm-ups.
Have your warm-ups. Yeah, be able to warm up, which we actually talk about next tip is like how to warm up your vocals and stuff. But that also goes to how to warm up your fingers as well, and how to warm up your wrists, you know, if you're a drummer, whatever the case may be. But going back to what we were talking about, how to practice. This is more of like should you sit or should you stand when you practice, right? Think about how you're positioned in terms of like how you're using the instrument and how you will be using the instrument. For example, I used to be in this class with this awesome professor named Professor, can I say it?
Yeah, Dr. Pollitt.
Dr. Pollitt. Awesome guy. Oh my God. He's a genius, a musical genius.
The definition
honestly.
of a band.
Yes. Dude, honestly, dude, he is awesome. And I was one of the two guitar players. I was the lead guitar player in the orchestral arrangement or ensemble
synthesizer ensemble.
And synthesizer ensemble, that's what it was.
Yep.
So I was one of the two guitar players in there, and he came up to us and we both sat in the back of the corner of the class, and he goes, well, how will you be playing live? And we were like, standing. And he was like, okay. He said, are you practicing while you stand? And I'm like, no. He's like, practice while you stand. Because like how you position yourself when you sit versus how you stand is really important. And it's very different. You have to get used to that muscle memory and start building that in. So that's what I mean about, you need to learn how to practice for each scenario. Yeah. So when you go to the recording studio and you're sitting on a stool, thank you, my goodness, and you're playing the acoustic, that's you should practice like that. You're not probably going to be holding up the acoustic and playing to them. I mean, that's like, oh my God, I would actually be upset if somebody did that, because like miking would be a disaster.
Moving around way too much.
God, yeah, way too much. So yeah, you're going to be sitting while you're playing the acoustic guitar. So
but maybe the ukulele, maybe the ukulele,
maybe the uke.
Who knows?
Maybe the uke.
Trumpet. Right. Are you sitting or standing?
Right.
Why do we practice? We practice so that we can perform better during a performance. Right.
Yep.
So think about, how are you performing? What is the upcoming performance going to be? And how do you wish to perform?
Yeah.
That is what you need to practice.
Yep.
As we were talking about a little bit earlier about knowing kind of more about studio recording so that you can practice of, hey, I know that we're going to have everything spaced further apart so we can spot mic all the drums. So I'm going to practice with the drums.
That's a big one.
Further apart.
That's a big one.
Yeah. I know we're going to have all of us performing at once in a room with headphones so that we don't have bleed coming through monitors. So let's practice with earbuds or headphones. Yep. So I'm used to that sound versus having a floor monitor in front of me.
Or you're going to be playing live and it's going to be darker than you're normally used to, instead of playing in a very well lit practice room. Turn off the lights.
Yep.
Or dim them a lot.
Can you see the tuner? Can you see your chords? Yep. Are you leaning heavily on the lyrics if you're like sitting in, or the chords if you're sitting in? Well, you can't do it live. Exactly. So practice in those kind of situations.
And like what you said, have your stuff laid out how you would on stage too, if you can, if you have the space to do that, because that'll just mean that it's just so much more fluid when you go up there. You're used to how you move, and you have these muscle memories and these tendencies, and you can go hit your tuning pedal when you need to tune in between a song, you know? I think you highlighted it really well, is that put yourself in all these different scenarios that might pop up and that you know for sure will pop up actually, and just be ready to go with it. Yeah. Because they're coming. So you might as well just practice that way and just be used to it. That'll alleviate so much stress from you too. So much stress.
You don't want to get thrown off.
No, not at all.
So I'm trying to help with that.
Yeah. We're here to help.
Yeah.
We'll hold your hand.
Your good old buddies, Sean and Brandon.
That's right. That's right. Who's good cop? Who's bad cop?
Both good?
I think so too.
I think so. Yeah. I don't want to be bad cop.
No, me neither.
No, doesn't sound fun.
No, it doesn't.
Speaking of fun, knowing how to warm up your vocals or any instrument that you briefly brought up. We're not going to go too heavily into this because you really talked about it. Just like loosening the wrists, your fingers, your vocal cords, making sure your range is fully active so that when you do go to the performance, you're able to hit that high note without cracking or without failing or being flat, or you're able to do that solo without like missing a couple notes or falling behind. You're able to put in the energy without hurting yourself, really.
Exactly.
I know plenty of drummers who have injured their wrists.
Yeah.
Because
carpal tunnel is real, people.
It's real.
It's real. Yeah, and I think one last thing to add on top of that, like know how to take care of your vocals, right? If you need tea with honey, like do that. Build that into your routine. Or
walk around with honey in your purse.
Honestly, I think people do it.
They do.
People walk around with hot sauce.
Oh yeah. I
know. It's sugar.
I forget her last name. There's an artist we've worked with over the years. Her name was Regina, and she would do that. She would have tea and honey for her voice whenever she was about to perform, and she would just drink that for a couple hours beforehand. I know another singer who, I don't know if it works or not, but her whole thing was she had the specific brand of potato chips that was really oily. And she would eat those potato chips before performing so the oil would kind of loosen the vocal cords.
Interesting.
For her. I don't know if it works or not, but for her it worked.
Right.
That was part of her routine for taking care of it.
Even if it's superstitious.
Even if it's placebo, it still works.
Exactly. Placebo. Better way to say it. Yeah. And I think that also goes for instruments as well. So like, please cut your fingernails before you go to play your guitar. Oh my God. Unless you're using your thumb and you're growing it out as for like a flamenco or Spanish style picking or something like that. Cut your fingernails before you play your guitar, because that will actually make a difference.
It does.
It lifts your finger off of the fretboard and off of the strings if you have too long of fingernails.
And also like angles it so you could mute the string beneath it versus being
Exactly. You have to make sure that you're prepped for these situations. And
gross question. Do you have a nail clipper in your studio?
No.
I do.
Do you really?
I really do.
Oh my God. That's it just seems foul.
Sometimes you got to do what you got to do for the music, man.
That is true, man. Wow.
You wear a mask, I clip nails.
That's true. We'll meet in the middle, right? Oh man. You're right though. Sometimes you do what you got to do.
Yeah. And they make small ones you can put in your keychain so you can always carry it around with you just in case you forget.
That's fair.
Yeah. You can get some like floral patterns or whatnot so it looks kind of cute. Why not? I know way too much about nail clippers. I'm just realizing for myself.
That's crazy. Maybe we should move on to the next one.
Okay, from knowing how to warm up Should also be good to, I'll let you take this one because I think you put this one in.
Yeah, you should know your lyrics by heart to kind of loosen your reliance on reading your lyrics either in the studio or on stage.
And the more music you create, the harder this gets.
It is, especially if you're doing like covers on stage too, because like if you have like 200, 250, 300 songs in your repertoire, it's hard to remember all that. So like having the iPad next to you will help a lot. But even knowing just the bass line and having them memorized will loosen your reliance on it. So if your iPad dies while you're on stage, or it turns off by accident, or just something goes awry, or you just feel like you're starting to read the lyrics instead of actually sing the lyrics like you mean them, that can all play a big part in the performance. So just know your lyrics by heart. Also, when you're in the studio, sometimes like this comes up sometimes, and people are always really shocked when I tell them to turn off or turn on airplane mode. But like your microphone will actually intercept frequencies from the phone when it pulls in information from text messages and stuff like that from the satellites, right? And that'll actually translate into the recording. It'll go, and that you can't scrub that out. That's there permanently. That actually does get captured. So loosening your reliance on having your phone there actually helps. But worst case scenario, you put it on airplane mode and put it behind the mic. You'll be just fine most of the time.
Or write on a piece of paper.
Or write on the piece of paper. But I think the most important part here is to illustrate that the more you know the lyrics, the better performance you'll get, because you won't be reading them necessarily.
You're feeling it. You're
exactly.
not in your head. You're out of it in the music.
Yep. Agreed.
So,
yep.
It helps.
Absolutely.
Next one.
The next one isn't sexy, Sean.
It's very sexy. What are you talking about?
Because I don't know him.
Scales.
I know him on the keys. I don't know him on guitar.
I know him on the bass.
Really?
Yeah.
I need to sit down and do this, but
whatever instrument you is.
Yeah. Even drums. I'm just flying.
I mean, drums have tunings.
They do.
Yeah. You can try to figure it out.
Yeah. Let us know.
Yeah.
Send us a video.
Try it out.
Scales.
Oh man, especially if you want to sit in with other musicians. This kind of goes to the final point we're going to make, is know what song scales your songs are in or what key they're in.
Yeah.
So that if someone is coming, you can say, oh, we're in the key of A. They know what to do. And if you're that person, now you know what you're going to play.
Yep.
Scales, they're kind of boring to practice.
They're
very boring.
Yeah.
But knowing where the starting point is, kind of where you're going, major, minor, the major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished major, that whole thing is so useful.
It is. It's how musicians communicate.
Exactly.
That is literally the language of the music.
Yeah.
So know it. Don't be like me.
And you said it's not sexy, but man, it can just be so empowering and fun.
It is.
When you jump in and you're just like jamming right along with it. And like, oh, we're going to the pre-chorus, and then you're just able to hit that because you feel like, oh, we're going to go up to this. We're hitting the seventh this time. Like you can feel where it's going to move. There's no hi-hat better than that.
It's true though. It's true. That's when it does become sexy. When it's not sexy is when I'm going to make you play to a click and all the scales. Knock out two birds with one stone. There you go. 2 tips right there.
That's your homework.
Play with a click and then know your scales and play the scales with a click. I'm just saying, dude, we all have to do it at some point.
Yep. So. And don't just do it with your instrument. Sing it too.
Oh.
Because if you know your
better.
scales, holy crap, you can just knock out harmonies like it's nothing. Yeah. And that is such a good skill to have that really breeds to creativity. Because if you know your scales and you can sing them accurately and hit the harmonies, and even if it doesn't sound quite right, if you're able to hit like the second or things that are a little more, push and pull or whatnot, and you're in the studio and you're like, hey, you can walk up to the drummer. Not the drummer. You can walk up to the saxophonist and be like, hey, you're playing the third. Why don't you, instead of like, why don't you go like, you can verbalize it with your voice to have them match it versus like, oh yeah, go down half a step or whatever. It's a lot easier to communicate with the actual music, or like, hey, try da 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 instead of da 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 da, whatever it is.
That was jazzy, Sean. That was jazzy.
Well, we're talking about saxophone. Yeah, then you can like do scat in that song. No, but communicate about music with music, and if you're able to hit those scales and hear it and make sure and communicate it naturally, that is a very awesome skill to have when composing or working with other musicians. And having your scales down pat really helps.
We don't have this down, but I want to add this too, is know like your rhythmic values too, just a general bass line. Of course those will change, but they won't change in terms of like how they actually are, but like they'll change in terms of like how they're played in a specific tempo, right? Either they're a little bit faster, a little bit slower, sure. But like I'm talking like know what a quarter note is, know what an eighth note is. So when somebody asks you to do a sound check and they're like, play quarter notes on the toms, right?
Yep.
You're dun dun dun.
Yeah.
Dun, instead of dun, 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 so like just know a general bass line. Of course that there's a lot of leeway with the rhythmic values because they do change.
Oh yeah.
But I think it's just generally good to know that.
Yeah, what's the expectation? And once again, it's also like the communication of it. So if you're saying to the drummer, like, hey, I like what you're doing, the 4 to the floor.
Yep.
Can you try adding in a note at the 8th note between the 3rd and the 4th hit?
Mm-hmm.
It kind of helps communicate it better.
It does.
And now you could spend the time and just go like, instead of boom, ka, you do boom, kata, whatever it is.
Yep.
And these kind of onomatopoeias help communicate this stuff.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
And I was going to say that illustrates there's another way to communicate that, right?
Yeah, and knowing the onomatopoeias for it. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
So
And those are always fun.
they really are.
They're fun.
They really are fun.
Boom, ka, ka, boom, ka. That was fun.
Just get good at beatboxing.
I'm so sorry. There's probably a massive plosive on that.
Dude, I had this buddy who was really good at beatboxing. He would compete at it in college.
Really?
And
We need him on the
was
podcast
Noah.
immediately.
I don't know if he still does it, but he was really good. I have talked to him in a couple of years, but he was really good at it. In fact, I brought my Zoom H6 to school one day, and I just had him sample a bunch of his like beatboxing
That's
things.
awesome.
And I don't know if I still have the file. It's got to be somewhere, but
That's
yeah.
killer.
there's some pretty cool things you can do with sounds out there.
Ooh, that'd be sweet.
But yeah, that's pretty much it for this episode about technical skills that you can have to improve yourself as a musician. That would be very beneficial for you to know.
Super duper.
Super duper.
I don't know why I said that.
Because it's fun to say.
It is.
Super duper. Yay. Anyways, thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. If any of these you do, let us know.
Yeah.
Or if you haven't thought about any of these and you're like, oh man, I want to try it. That could be really beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
Go right ahead. Incorporate any of these into any of these ingredients into your own recipe.
Yeah.
And
I want to say one last thing real quick.
okay, go for it.
That some of these things you're not going to do overnight.
No.
It's just a culmination of learning throughout the years. And some of these things become super, super natural to do. And you won't even think about it anymore. We listed them and they might seem a little bit more spooky to do now because there was a lot of them and there's a lot of homework for you guys to do this week. No, I'm just kidding. But it seems like there's a lot. And you know what? I guarantee you some of you guys know the majority of them already, right? Just by playing music, by being a musician. But they're things to be conscious of. And sometimes things you have to remind yourself to be conscious of when you're put in these situations and just be up to snuff with them.
Very well said.
I try my best to be positive at
You
the
do
end.
a good job.
Thank
You do a
you.
good job of it. Positivity.
I just want to motivate people to make their best music. Craft the best recipes.
Yeah. Anyways, with that said, please do all the things that every podcast or video ever tells you to do. Subscribe, like, comment, share.
Hit the bell notification, smash that like button.
Yep. Beat the shit out of the subscribe button.
Yep.
You know,
Absolutely just pummel the fuck out of it.
just like fucking kick it while it's down. We don't care.
Yeah.
But no,
insult it and yeah.
that's not going to do anything.
That's true.
Remember,
Don't do
words,
that.
Words will never hurt me. But do all that. If there's any other musicians that you know could get some benefit from this show, please share it to them as well. We'd love to kind of spread this out there. Obviously, it'd be a huge help for us, but also if it gives you any benefit, let us know. And we really hope that it does. With that said, there's plenty of content that's in addition to these podcast episodes on our YouTube, our TikTok, our Instagram, our Facebook even. So these are all at Music Maker
LinkedIn.
Cookbook.
Not LinkedIn.
Not yet. maybe no, probably not. But at Music Maker's Cookbook, if you want to reach out to us directly with any topics that you want us to cover in the future, you can reach out to us at podcast@musicmakerscookbook.com. This is episode 24. So next episode is episode 25.
Ooh, a special one.
Yeah, it's half a year. It's 6 months of doing this.
Wow, dude.
So we're going to kind of recap, talk about some things that we've done, and really talk about the plans for this podcast in the future. So be sure to check that out and kind of get an idea of where things are going and give some feedback on that one so you can be part of the process of kind of changing the trajectory of what's happening here in our kitchen.
Yeah. Yeah. This is your time to voice your opinion and to really change what we do. If you tell us to quit, we're not going to.
That's the only thing we won't take into
So that's the only thing. So
consideration.
Remember, words don't hurt us.
Yeah.
Like Sean just said.
Unless you throw a dictionary at us, then technically they would.
That is true. Dictionaries are thick.
Right. There's a lot of words.
Capital C's. Thick.
With that said, from our kitchen to yours, thank you for cooking with us.
Bon appetit.